Bryan, can we hear you?
Yes, you can hear me now. I don't know how much longer you'll be able to hear me, but I am on my way to Ainsworth, Nebraska to go check out Carter Nelson in person. This has been a trip that I have been looking forward to. It's going to be me and Sean Callahan and Steve Sipple coming out to meet with him, meet with his dad, who's also his head basketball coach, and we're going to stick around tonight, and we're going to go to his basketball game at 5:30. So, it's such amazing timing. I mean, picks up the offer from Alabama yesterday. I'm really stopping short of calling Carter Nelson a generational talent. It really is kind of starting to look that way. However, when you start talking about a guy that's 6'5", 215, runs a 4.5, and can high jump 7 foot, I mean, I'm really looking forward to tonight and getting a chance to watch him play basketball.
Now, what other schools are in on the Carter Nelson sweepstakes?
Whew. USC is one of the last schools to enter into the picture. I know that Kansas State is pulling out all the stops to try to get him. I think that they had, pretty much their entire coaching staff coming up to see him at one point. I know that Nebraska obviously is still very much in the picture. His dad did confirm to me that he will be taking a visit to see Nebraska here in March or April. Doesn't really have a date quite yet set up. But this is, Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame's in the picture as well. It's just when you say the word Alabama, and I think that things, really started to you had to kind of do a double take on a lot of guys. Like, I think it was really Ernest Hausman was the first one I really kind of had to go, who offered him? But it was like, COVID has put these college coaches now in their desk, at their desk, in their chair, on huddle, checking out guys from not just their parts of the world that they typically recruit, but checking out players from all across the country and really getting a chance to kind of go in and examine this stuff and see these guys. So, there's a ton of teams here. I think he's up to 20 FBS offers. I think Alabama was I think he's over 20 now. Actually, 20 was Louisville. I think he's close to like 25, but yeah, he's got Louisville too. I mean, it's insane how many offers this guy has. And like I said, I think he's fully aware or fully worth all the hype.
And I'm interested too, because I think it's fascinating, obviously, that he plays at the eight-man level. And sometimes you'll see kids even from just playing the highest level in Nebraska go to IMG Academy or something. So I'm interested to see if there's any thought to moving up or forward, but the fact that you got USC and Alabama already interested in you, what are you going to do? How are you going to help yourself in that situation?
Well, and I totally agree with that, and I think that both his mom and his dad are in education up here at the community school in Ainsworth, so they're obviously very embedded there in the community. Their son, to your point, has already caught the eyes of folks in Los Angeles and Tuscaloosa and Louisville and North Bend or South Bend, excuse me. I'm really to the conclusion there would really be nothing that he could really improve on. Being up here, clear north of Kearney, and that's where I started out this morning about an hour and 15 minutes ago. There's really nothing more that he has to kind of do than just show up and do his job, because he's already got 20 plus offers.
We're speaking with Bryan Munson on 3 Husker Online. And Bryan, what would be like the hesitancy from colleges, universities to offer guys who are playing 8-man football, who aren't playing 11-man football? Because you hear a lot of times guys playing 8-man or 6-man, the transition to 11-man, the transition to a college environment regardless, is a little bit tougher. So what have they really seen outside of the physicals from Carter Nelson that makes them feel confident enough, in Alabama or USC, to offer a kid out in Ainsworth, Nebraska?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's like the game is different. The scale of it is different because you've got the different number of players on the field. The rules are different and how things, basically happen. And I've seen both sides of it. I mean, Terry Keneally, he wasn't an 11-man football player. But yeah, I think here with Carter, it's like, look, he's a tight end / wide receiver, and he's really played kind of a little bit all over the place. He's done some different things. His stats were unbelievable. But I think it's really about how it kind of translates to the Division I game, and the game of catching the football. Well, that's gonna remain pretty consistent no matter what. Not necessarily the same type of quarterback that you're obviously working with at both levels, but I mean the athleticism totally. It totally translates at that. And like I said, he's a 6'2", 215 running a 4.5. And I think that's what's got everybody's eyes. And I think that they all realize that there's going to be at least a little bit of time that's going to take for him to for the game to slow down, for things to for him to get acclimated to playing the Division I football level, whether it's in Lincoln or anywhere else. He's going to have a little bit of time to kind of see things move, kind of catch that spacing and catch how the field is different. But those are all things I think that he will be capable of making those adjustments. I think the athleticism side really, really helps that part of it out the most.
And I'm interested too, and I know when you guys visit with them, you'll get a better perspective of it. So certainly keep in tune to Bryan Munson and the guys they have at On 3 and Husker Online for their stories coming out. But what are your kind of thoughts right now? I know it's early in the process of him becoming a Husker, because I know, back in the day, you think small town Nebraska, that's a lock, but who knows with these days, especially the offers he's getting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I had a good conversation yesterday with a former Husker in Kearney, and it's like, what we talked about was, it's like these guys didn't grow up, in that time frame of enjoying the successful Nebraska Cornhusker teams of the 90s. And he didn't really feel like that necessarily was as much of a lock anymore for all these kids to kind of lead, to kind of stay in state, especially like when you get schools like Notre Dame and Alabama and schools like that want to lure you away. And in Ainsworth, it's not like it's Omaha. It's not like it's Lincoln. It's not even like it's Kearney. It is clear out here. And I definitely, it's one of the things I really plan on kind of touching base about, was just kind of like, how connected does he really feel to Lincoln, being where he's from? And I mean, is that kind of then open things up, the idea that he can potentially lead the state a little easier than it would like a guy that's growing up in Nebraska, like the real legitimate backyard of the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting following there. And then it's going to be interesting following, just kind of jumping off Carter Nelson. A few guys at Bellevue West, whether you're talking about Dave Von Hall or Isaiah McMorris, Daniel Kalen, especially interesting with the Dylan Raiola interest out there. Is this, I mean, you just look at just Nelson in Hall, those are maybe nationally some top 200 type of kids. Is this yet another class that we're looking at Nebraska high school football stepping up and being better than it had? It seems like the last 4 or 5 years, it's been flooded with D1 prospects, whereas before that it was pick here and there.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I mean, you got 2 D1, nationally, national attention wide receivers. You got Caleb Benning that's got offers from all over the place. You got 2 Division I offensive tackles, and you get Carter Nelson, and you got Daniel Kalen. I skipped over Kalen, and Kalen's got Miami and Minnesota and Missouri and North Carolina. This is a really good class. I don't think it's 2023 top to bottom good, but I think that your star power is certainly there. I think you can put like your Carter Nelson could stand up, put him up there at least in a kind of a comparison, like with a Malachi Coleman, based on the athleticism, based on the skill set, based on the potential, And then I think Flores, I give him the edge over Keeneland still, but then you got. I would want to say that you got 2 better offensive tackles this year than the guys that were there last year, the offensive linemen. So there's some give and take. And I don't think top to bottom, and I don't think they have as many this year, but this is still a very, very, very good class. It's sneaky good, and I think Omaha is deep. We even past the 2024 class into 2026. There's some dudes there that are going to be D1. They're going to get a lot of D1 attention as time goes on.
What is the delicate balance that Nebraska has to do with Daniel Kaelin? I think that's so interesting. Where sometimes it's if you're going to get Raiola, does it have to be a one quarterback class? And if you strike out on him, were you too late and not paying enough attention to Kaelin? Is Kaelin even number 2 on their boards? What is kind of the recruiting you think approach from Nebraska with him?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a slippery slope because I think Nebraska, I don't want to say that they're all in on Raiola, but I think that's the first guy they want to find out about. They're going to give him the amount of attention that it takes to get him and be really serious about demonstrating how important he is to that class, how important he is to the state. And I don't think that lines up very well with what Daniel Kaelin has in mind, because Daniel Kaelin, if you ask me, I think he could be committed by sometime in March, maybe April. So that I think doesn't really line up. And I think Kaelin's just kind of playing the hand that he was dealt. I think that he's saying, look, I feel great about my options. I have Minnesota. I have North Carolina. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go see Miami, and I'm going to see all these other places. And, I'm going to make my decision for what for the options that I have. And if Nebraska really feels like that Raiola is their guy and they don't really have a spot for me yet because they're waiting it out for Raiola, then that's fine. I'm going to be confident and happy with what I got going on. And then, of course, you play the other side of that, too. If Raiola decides that he's going to go someplace else, Georgia, USC, whatever, I'm sure Nebraska is going to try to reconnect with Daniel. But Daniel's a smart kid. I mean, talking to him face-to-face 2 weeks ago, that's a guy that's obviously I'm sure he's thought through all of these scenarios. He's thought through the idea that maybe potentially with Nebraska could try to circle back and talk to them if they missed on a Raiola. But I really feel like Nebraska is putting the best foot forward, trying to go ahead and get Raiola. You're going to see him in Lincoln in about 4 weeks. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I've heard a ton of things about possible domino effect that if Dylan Raiola decided to go to Nebraska, some of the names that I have heard recently that could potentially be more interested in Nebraska than they are right now, it's pretty eye popping, and it's going to. I mean, I ran a story today on Zion Carney, who's a 4-star, like 92 dot whatever 4-star by on 3, and he's got Nebraska in his top 6. We haven't even been talking about him. And he's going to visit in April. And, and you've got Aaron Hampton down there from Dangerfield, Texas. Things are going to get really, really wild. Coach Rule and his staff have Nebraska in a really good spot right now.
All right. Bryan Munson of Husker Online on 3. That gets me excited because I was kind of thinking the same thing might get rolling there. Are we talking about Bill Callahan era-esque, like top 10 maybe if you get Donovan Raiola? I mean, can Nebraska do what hasn't been done in a long time? I know it's really early and really unfair to ask this question, but but I mean, if they did get Dylan Raiola, you're talking about that kind of effect. We always talk about how Nebraska can finish in the top 25, and that's nice. But you think about those Callahan era classes, that's when the talent kind of stacked up for Pelini to have his best teams, the best teams that we've seen in the past 20 years. Do you think that Nebraska could break top 15, top 12? Certainly the number 1 player in the nation certainly helps with those rankings if they can get him.
I don't think there would be any doubt that you're talking about those types of numbers in class ranking. If Raiola decided to go to Nebraska, I think the way that Coach Rule and his staff could present that back out to potential recruits, I think that the come along effect, the Pied Piper effect, whatever you want to call it, I think it would be incredible. I think that is a huge selling point for so many recruits when they see a guy of Dylan Raiola's caliber, basically commit to a school. That school then has interest in you. That has a tremendous effect. There's a tremendous pull effect when that kind of thing happens.
Beautiful stuff. It's always good to end on a good note, so we'll go ahead and do that. Bryan, we made it through the interview. You're out in 8-man football land. Have fun with your story, and we'll look forward to reading it because it's going to be a fascinating what you guys come out of that. But thanks again for joining us.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Should have something up tomorrow.
All right, we'll be on the
Right.
lookout. Thank you. There he goes, Bryan Munson of Husker
Started losing
Online
towards
on
the end
Thursday.
there.
Yeah, a little bit. But you know what? That was an awesome interview. We get excited. I want to be excited for Husker recruiting like I was in the Callahan era. And, it's been off and on here and there. And then over the last several years, obviously without Nebraska winning, it just kind of gets into it kind of gets frustrating. It's like, man, even these guys, if they hit are long down the road. But I mean, I know you're the one that likes to throw the water on the Dylan Raiola conversation, but that's the reason why it's exciting.
100%.
You can talk about potentially competing up there, and that's year in and year out. There's always a playoff team that somehow came out of nowhere. TCU was kind of the team this year that is outside of the blueprint, but the blueprint to get to the playoffs and to compete for national championships is legitimately top 10 recruiting classes basically year after year. And while that might be hard to get to, sometimes you can get an equalizer, and the best equalizer is at quarterback. And so, but if they can move up into that range, even for a few years, and similar to kind of Bill Callahan, again, that kind of set the way for what Bo Pelini was able to do here.
And I apologize if this seems like I'm throwing water on the fire. I don't mean to, but I cannot wait for a time where when a kid in Nebraska gets an offer from an Alabama, it's not impressive. It's just like, oh, cool. Like that should be happening. Like these guys out here are just good. Like they should be getting offers from all of these places, or Nebraska, or we don't get excited for Nebraska having an offer out to somebody who then gets an offer from an Ohio State, and everybody goes, oh, well, this guy must be good. Like, no, Nebraska offered him. Of course he must be good. I can't wait for that to happen when Nebraska's winning and they're doing all the things they're supposed to be doing, and is possibly in playoff talks where Nebraska offers a guy and it's just like, yes, this guy is good. It doesn't matter what other offers he has, because a lot of other schools, they don't care who else offers this guy. And that's kind of what Rule and them have been saying. We don't care if we're the first Division I team to offer a kid. If we think he can play, we're gonna offer him, or we're gonna see if he wants to play for us. So once that happens, it's gonna be a great time in Nebraska land.
Well, that's how it used to be. I mean, there was a time when Nebraska was the Alabama, where teams would go, oh, Nebraska offered this.
Well, we should get in on it.
We got to lock in on it.
Yeah, let's go.
But of course, Nebraska no longer there. And like you said, they've been trying to find some diamonds in the roughs and going places where, quite frankly, not a whole lot of other Power 5 teams are interested. And maybe that will pay off too, as it has in the past for Matt Rule and his staff. Exciting times ahead for Nebraska football. Of course, an exciting weekend ahead for Nebraska sports. We'll talk more of that coming up next with Nick Sainert for the crossover as Happy Hour makes its way here at the top of the hour. We'll be back on 93.7 The Ticket.